A cleaner environment and less dependence on fuel imports. This is the promise of renewable energy.
The Philippines is taking a bold step to boost renewable energy capacity and may even make the Philippines a hub for renewable energy expertise in the future.
The road ahead may not be easy. Still, it's never too early to start.
Today, ANC brings together regulators, investors, experts, and critics to discuss the renewable energy program, where it is, and what lies ahead. I'm Coco Alcuaz.
And I'm Tina Monzon Palma. This is ANC Presents A Sustainable Future. Compared with conventional power plants, renewable energy sources have limited markets, due mainly, they say, to intermittent power generation and huge investment costs. But experts believe the Philippines can fully tap wind, solar, and hydropower. Just what does it take to put up green power plants?
Around the world, the energy system is taking on another path, from fossil fuels to renewable energy. Blessed with abundant renewable energy sources, the Philippines is determined to take the lead. But just what is renewable energy? One is geothermal energy. Next to the United States, the Philippines is the second largest producer of geothermal power in the world. There is also hydropower. Given the country's vast hydropower potential, more than 10% of electricity requirements will be supplied by hydropower generation. Potential sites for mini and micro hydro projects are evenly distributed in all the regions. But capital intensive in nature and with a long gestation period, tapping hydropower poses big challenges. There is also solar power, wind power, and biomass. The Energy Department says biomass, solar, and wind will be among the major sources of energy for the next decade, accounting for more than a third of the country's total energy demand. How can the government and the private sector tap and maximize these renewable energy sources? How can the public contribute? And what is the right mix needed to achieve our renewable energy goals?
With us tonight, Energy Secretary Rene Almendras. We also have Dennis Ibarra, President of the Philippine Solar Power Alliance and President of Infinity Philippines. We have Poch Ambrosio. He is the Secretary of the Wind Energy Development Association of the Philippines and Corporate Secretary of Northwind Power Development Corporation. We also have Rasul-Bernardo, Executive Vice President of Aboitiz Power, and Catherine Maceda, Managing Director of the Center for Clean and Renewable Energy Development. For this part of the forum, my colleague Coco Alcuaz will monitor reactions, questions, and comments from our social media viewers. He'll join us a little later, as well as other guests. Thank you very much for joining us. And a lot of people are wondering, why is there all of a sudden a discussion on renewable energy? Why is this being talked about and a lot of parties interested on renewable energy now, Secretary Almendras?
I think, Tina, it's not just the Philippines. It's all over the world. There's now IRENA, International Renewable Energy Association. It's as big as the United Nations. It's all over the world. It's a place where people from the United States, from Asia, from Africa talk, and we all have the same concerns. The issue and the title of your program about sustainability is really the spirit behind renewable energy. There is a need for humankind to develop sustainable energy sources. Our craving for energy is almost insatiable. The growth of consumption has already outpaced the discovery of fossil fuels. So you're looking at the question of sustainability. In the case of the Philippines, a law was passed in 2008. A landmark law was passed in 2008. And this is where we are today. We in the department, being a department of government, is supposed to to implement the laws that have been put in place. But as I said, there's very good basis and reason for the inception of these laws.
Okay, and you being in the sector of solar power, what got you into it as a company and as an individual maybe?
Well, after the law was passed more than 2 years ago, the whole emergence of all the IRRs and all of the rules and regulations came about. And then the government, with the new administration also, put in place the right boards, the right programs to encourage all the investors to come here. And so, at least from the Solar Power Alliance and Association, and also from our company, we see a great big potential here to invest, a great big potential to make a huge impact in a short time because of solar energy's very fast time to market.
In the present installed capacity of solar in the Philippines, how much does the solar sector contribute?
No, we're very minuscule at the moment because the law has not been implemented yet.
Yes, but you are established. You have little projects here and there where solar power panels are being utilized now.
There are pilot projects, especially on rooftops, especially on in the 1 megawatt Sepalco, Cagayan de Oro pilot that was done many years ago, and also on many of the islands, several. Not just several, but many islands have solar lanterns, solar panels.
So maybe we'll talk about its actual utilization and its benefits later on. And you are from the
wind energy.
Wind energy, and where are your projects and why wind?
Well,
as far as your company is concerned.
Well, I'm also part of North Wind Power, the pioneering wind farm in the Philippines as well as Southeast Asia. We started in 2005. Delivering electricity to initially the province of Ilocos Norte. The plant has about 33 megawatts, and during what we call high wind season, this covers about 50% of the requirements of the province. So as far as our colleagues in the Wind Association are concerned, I think North Wind showed the way that wind is a viable technology in the Philippines. We can put up wind farms here. We are in a what you would call a wind corridor, the Hanging Amihan, and that given the right environment, more wind farms could be set up.
Okay, wind farms is where you're at. The Aboitiz group is into geothermal and hydro.
Yes.
What does this mean for this kind of renewable energy? Geothermal and hydro.
Well, we actually have two kinds of hydro. We operate run-of-river hydro plants.
Yes.
Both in northern Luzon and in Mindanao. And we have large hydros, which we operate with our Norwegian partners. And we run the Tiwi Macban geothermal plant. So the total renewable portfolio we have is about 885 megawatts.
Megawatts, supplying all of the areas.
Yes.
That you are.
That's our beneficial ownership.
Okay. Okay. And Catherine here belongs to an NGO, and you are more or less the person who actually reviews and looks closely at what are the efficiencies of all of these kinds of renewable energy.
I guess we're here to ensure that nobody forgets about RE after the law is passed. You know, people are saying it took 19 years to have this law passed. From way back in the 9th Congress, it was passed only in the 13th Congress. And there are very specific objectives upon which the law was based. We want, number one, to make sure that our households in many of our poor communities will gain access to sustainable electricity. Unknown to many people, we have 10 million households that are using kerosene. And hopefully with renewable energy, we can shift them to more sustainable forms of electricity or energy. Another 5 million would use charcoals. We have nearly 5 million households still without electricity at the moment. And many of these are in off-grid areas. And maybe the only hope for them to have electricity is through renewable energy.
Okay, and the targets of the Department of Energy and the National Regulatory Renewable Energy Board are what, as far as you're concerned?
Well,
You're expecting regular outputs from these, from the present ones now. Is that going to be the basis of the targets of all of these new contracts that will be finally on, that will finally be rolled on one of these years?
the idea is that the law laid out a landscape of rules to be followed. The law specified that there should be a National Renewable Energy Board,
Yes.
composed of private sector, including the developers, who were going to make recommendations. The law is very specific on who's doing what. So rate setting is National Renewable Energy Board, recommended to ERC. Targets, we had to clarify that because at one point in time, NREB was also thinking that they were supposed to set targets. We in the DOE were also studying targets. Offhand, we published the National Renewable Energy Plan, which, in fairness to Ms. Cates here, should have been done a year or two ago. And we kind of, thanks to them and many other stakeholders, the DOE was able to rush the completion of an NREP, which was supposed to be step one. And there we see doubling the 5,000 megawatts into 15,000 megawatts, which is significantly an ambitious target. Now, some people will criticize that's too big. My point is,
Target just alone for the renewable energy?
yes,
Okay.
just to triple the increase, threefold the amount of renewable energy that we will eventually be doing by 2030. 2030 is still far way off, but the reality is energy pricing then will be a completely different dimension in its own. So what we're saying now is, let's start doing things now in anticipation of what the realities of the future are going to be. Now,
But do you tell each source of energy or each of these investors what is their output or what is their contribution to this target?
There have been studies that have been done by
Yes.
different groups of past that said this is the potential for solar, this
Yes.
is the potential for
For
wind,
wind, this is the
and all
potential
that.
for
So
biomass, this is
all
the
of this have been
potential.
included in the National Renewable Energy Plan, which is to
Yes.
attempt to maximize. Now, the problem with renewable is, for example, wind. NREL said there's wind all over the place, and yet when they do wind testing, they said there's wind in this area. Okay, there's wind, but it's it's not there 24 hours a day. It's only there 20% of the time, and that affects the viability or the economics of it. So it's easy to say this is the potential, but it's one thing to go there, put a measuring device, and test it. The same for hydro, especially run-of-river. The people say, oh, this river is very strong. Yeah, but is it dry season flow or wet season flow? And they need to design their power plants according to a minimum maximum.
Okay, I don't know
component.
if I'm getting ahead of the subject matter now. Given that kind of an observation, how then are you able to do a FIT, a tariff system that is based on all of these uncertainties and inconsistencies in the source of power generation?
Okay. Now, I guess, Tina, the way, and I don't mean this, the lady and the gentleman here are probably better at this topic than I am.
Yes.
The feed-in tariff is a mechanism to encourage investments
Yes.
into a technology. It is not the only form. One strategy is you set a price and you let people come in and invest. The other strategy is you put a number, it says we need X megawatts of a certain technology, and you let people
Yeah.
bid it into that.
Okay.
The economics of both are quite different. In some places in the world, they've used FIT. In other places, they've used what's known as an RPS
Let me
mechanism.
go to the investors themselves. How did you consider when you came into the picture to invest in solar power? What did you look at?
Well, first of all, we were invited under the regime of feed-in tariff.
You were invited
Yes,
under
okay.
the regime of
Yes,
FIT,
and I
plus
think-
all the incentives that came with it.
Yes, but of course to give reasonable project models and work with the
What was most attractive in the FIT and in the incentive package presented by government then?
the attractiveness is to get a reasonable return depending on which technology. For solar, we're the lowest return at less than
Yes.
10% on the WACC, okay, on the weighted average cost of capital.
Yeah.
And here with the kind of developments by the NREB and what the ERC promulgated last year with the IRRs, with implementing rules and regulations, we follow those models that they gave us. And so because of this, for solar, for instance, we have had a great interest to bring several hundred megawatts, which many of our members have applied for with the DOE, even though they're still in the pre-development phase.
Okay, it was the FIT then that attracted you, and the incentive package, cash and non-cash as well. What about in the wind power sector?
I would say it would be the same incentive.
Yeah.
Largely because in the renewable energies portfolio, there's already uncertainty with respect to the resource. So if you can make the project more viable by making the tariff at least stable and dependable, then it would make it a more attractive investment. I think
even if there's no energy being generated as a result of the fluctuations.
But if there's no energy being generated, you would not be able to charge.
Okay. This is transmitted energy or delivered energy.
Yes.
Okay. What about you? You are in hydro and geo. Why are you not in solar and in wind?
Well, there's we think that there are other dimensions to the renewable energy and energy in general, and one of them is affordability. And run-of-river hydro is still the cheapest of the renewable sources, and that's what we've been focused on.
But do you use gas to bring up the to generate the energy?
No.
Nothing. It's just the river itself.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, the difference between like run-of-river hydro and, for example, the impounding dams is that you don't you don't flood a large area. You just but that's what makes it intermittent. So yeah, I guess the main components, I think just as important as the fit rate for these plants is the fact that you are able to sell the output. I mean, you have a market for the output even though it's intermittent.
So looking at the final charge to a customer, you're talking about the benefits to the people who do not have electricity in far-flung areas. Are these projects now that will be on stream one of these years, will it benefit the ordinary consumer in a far-flung area in a provincial setting?
Definitely. This is just one part of the
That means there is a transmission cost. I mean, all of these kinds of renewable energy must be in a farm or in a grid, and there will have to be a distribution somewhere along the line, which is going to be done by Transco?
Okay.
Is this how it's
RE
done?
could be grid or off-grid.
Off-grid.
On-grid or off-grid. For poor communities, off-grid communities, RE is useful because by tapping the power of run-of-river, let's say, we can give energy to off-grid communities. We have to remember that the RE law was passed mainly as an incentive measure. We pioneered geothermal energy in Southeast Asia way back in the 70s. It provided solution to the power situation at the time because of the increasing oil prices. And then we had, we had developed wind power, again as a pioneer. But if you look at our history in terms of RE development, we have not really grown exponentially in ways that people expect us to grow because we've been pioneering these things over time. Now, people are saying, why are we giving so much incentives to developers?
Yes.
We don't give incentives to developers who will develop the renewable energy. Government has practically stopped investing in energy development. We've sold our assets. We've retained NPC mainly to address SPAG, missionary electrification. This is where they come in now to provide electricity to poor communities. And to a certain extent, if you ask, will they be benefited by this measure? Of course. Consumers like us might end up actually subsidizing the needs of the poor communities.
Do we actually pay for the developmental cost of all of these?
Consumers will have to pay for that.
Will pay for it?
Consumers will have to provide a reasonable rate of return. And that's the role of government. When they file applications for rates for feed-in tariff, it is the duty of government to make sure that they are able to evaluate this in ways that it is going to be fair. Fair in a sense that they will not charge anything more than what they're supposed to get back. I'll give you an example, Tina.
Well, what is a comfortable rate of return on the investments of these people?
Okay, an example is biomass. In the FIT application, I think they peg it at 7
Biomass
pesos.
is that uses rice, sugar,
Feedstock, yes.
cocoa,
The residues.
Residues, yeah.
Environmentalists refuse to call them waste. Residues from these are agricultural
Okay,
byproducts.
okay. So,
we use it for
example.
biomass. They filed 7 pesos per kilowatt hour. But in the new coal capacities approved by ERC, it's 7.50. Biomass is even cheaper than the newly approved rates of coal. Hydro is even cheaper. The rate is what? 6.15 pesos per kilowatt hour. And the newly approved coal rate is 7.50.
I'm sure the ones from the NREB have a mathematical computation of how they arrived at that cost. No, we
Yes.
will get into that when,
Yes.
when this group
Yes.
comes around. But may I just read, lady and gentlemen, some of the comments. Coco is going to tell us about what's the buzz on the internet on the renewable energy program. Coco.
Thanks, Tina. We have some very specific questions and comments. Hopefully our guests can help us with them. Moira Galyaga asks, at the moment, what is the ratio of renewable and non-renewable energy supply and sources in the Philippines? Angel Tulod asks, how many contracts related to renewable energy have been signed since Secretary Almendras took over? And Miguel Lopez asks, is the feed-in tariff for renewable energy already finalized? Charlie Estalilla posted this comment on our Facebook page. We have PPA with Electric Cooperative in Bukidnon, but DOE's requirements for a startup renewable energy company, the word he uses is sucks. Secretary Almendras, what are your thoughts on those?
First,
Energy company sucks. I don't know what he means by sucks. Which one sucks?
I
Anyway,
guess
let's not
it's
dwell
the
into that.
requirements to apply for a service contract. Again, these are things that are included in laws. These are things that have been in place that need to be followed. Then there are issues about, there are constitutional questions about ownership of certain resources.
It is a foreign, there is a foreign percentage
No.
for investments?
Not for investments, because the RE exempts them from that. RE can be 100% foreign if you want to be. It's really about what does the developer own? Does he own, when he puts up a hydro plant, does he own the water that flows through it? And then now we also need to align ourselves with national, with the NWRB, the National Water Resource Board, because you know, we can give a service contract for a hydro to somebody, and it's actually somebody else who owns the water rights. Now, when we came into the picture, the discussion was quite diverse. So, unfortunately, there are requirements. In fairness to those who have fulfilled the requirements and have gotten successful contracts, these requirements are in place. On the issue of percentages,
Ratio of renewable and non-renewable energy supply
let's
and
clarify,
sources.
renewable is not new in the Philippines. It's been around for quite a while. So if you look at our total energy mix, renewable actually is already 38.6%. Total energy mix is an empty metric ton equivalent of energy measure. And that's across all. Generation, fuel for cars, and plus all types of energy consumption. RE already represents 38.6%. If you just talk of power generation, or the amount of renewable energy generation to power, it's already 53%. Okay, now, last year though...
Mainly delivered by geothermal and hydro.
Yes. Now, last year though, because of the La Nina, or rather the El Nino incidents in Mindanao, where the hydro generation was significantly reduced, that of the total 2010 generation, RE was reduced to 26.3%. That explains the disparity between the capacity of 53%
What
and
reduced,
26.
when you say reduced, why was there a reduction?
If you remember, during the summer of last year, Mindanao had 8 to 12 hour brownouts because there was no water in the hydro level. So the total share of generation that came from renewables was significantly reduced because of that. On the
contracts related
over
to renewable.
220 plus contracts have been signed prior to our term. We were asked to review the contracts. We have reviewed certain procedures because of conflicts. One of them is overlapping claims. We've seen that in hydro applications, seen that in geothermal even. We've reviewed the process. We've already started signing contracts again now for those that have no issues on legal matters.
Okay, of these 200 that were approved prior to your assumption of office, can you give us a breakdown of the 200? Were they mostly where, in what?
It's really across all the technologies.
Okay. This was before you gave a certain percentage of megawatts per source of energy, of renewable energy.
What happened, Tina, was when the RE law was passed, even if certain things did not yet happen, people already started going for resources. Everybody knew there's going to be a run-of-river mini hydro component. So everybody started looking for every single river that could be developed and studied, and everybody started applying for that, which is really what's supposed to happen. That's why you have this huge number of contracts that came on even before feed-in tariff was established, even before targets were established. Because there's a finite number of rivers, there's a finite number of geothermal locations, there's a finite number of wind locations. So naturally, everybody who wants to invest into renewables would like to get first crack at whatever resources.
Who developed a map for where all of these renewable energy sources would be coming as far as regions are concerned or specific places are concerned? Is there one map?
There's a DOE data based on all of the applications that we have received.
Which meant that all of the applicants had already done their own scans.
Well, the degree of study is not the same. Okay, someone may have gone to a river, looked at the flow, and then pulled back, said, I'm going to apply for this.
Okay, let's get the inputs of the solar. I look at this allocation of megawatts per source of renewable energy, and solar appears to have the lowest in terms of megawatts.
Yes, of course.
Because?
Of course, we disagree with.
Is that the most expensive? Why is that? And you do not agree with that kind of an allocation?
Of course, we do not agree with the allocation because every renewable energy technology has its own advantages and its own characteristics, right? And solar does not have boundaries with respect to geography, with respect to feedstock, with respect to other things. And also, as Ms. Cates mentioned, solar is one of the ones that can really be widely dispersed to the consumer and also off-grid. And so many of our applications are not only in the off-grid islands but also in the provinces such as Mindanao, where there's a great need, and we can deploy 10 to 50 megawatts in 6 months.
I'll get his input as soon as I listen to the other one. How about wind? How many was allocated? How many or how much? How many was allocated to wind?
The installation target for wind was 200 megawatts. We had initially requested for